question comes up a lot. Should I buy now or should I wait until interest rates drop? So I wanted to go ahead and record this video to kind of go through a scenario with you and explore what all the things you should be thinking about when making that decision. In this example, somebody's going to buy a $600,000 home. They're going to put down 20%, so their loan amount is going to be $480,000. Now, hypothetically, let's just use a rate of 7%. That's going to make their monthly payment, principal and interest payment, $3,193. Now, currently in rent, they're only paying $1,900. So it's almost $1,300 more to buy the house. If they're strapped for cash flows, their decision stops right there. If you're thinking about buying a homeownership, but there's no way, you don't feel like you can do this, then by all means, start setting aside that difference to make sure that you're comfortable with that higher payment. But to move forward, let's just say that for this person, they know they can afford that payment. They're just trying to decide if it makes more financial sense to buy now or wait. So in their case, obviously when rates do drop, they could always refinance. And let's just say hypothetically, they're going to do that in a year. Their balance at the end of that first year is now $475,000. Let's say rates are 5.5%. Now their new monthly payment is going to be $2,697. If, however, they were to wait until rates hit 5.5% in order to buy, let's say that appreciation is 4%. I feel like I'm being fairly conservative there, and I'll show you why in a bit, but we're using 4% here. Now that house that today cost them $600,000 cost them $624,000. So $24,000 more than if they would have bought it today by waiting a year. That means their down payment, if they still want to put 20% down, is higher by close to $5,000. And their loan amount is higher by almost $20,000. They still have the 5.5% rate, but now that's on the higher loan amount. So their payment's $137 more than if they would have bought the house now and refinanced. So that's a little bit of cash flow and where they are there, but let's take this a little bit farther. In a year, if they would have bought the house now, when you take this mortgage payment and times it by 12, they would have spent $38,000 in payments. But they were going to pay to live indoors no matter what. So if they would have continued renting for that year, they would have still been out $22,800. So let's call that a wash because that was going to be spent no matter what. So their actual cash flow difference for having bought the house is $15,000. But what about balance sheet? Well, $5,000 of that went to their principal because their loan balance has reduced. It was 480, now it's down to 475. So it's kind of balance sheet neutral because they spent that 5,000, but that 5,000 went on their asset side of their balance sheet because it added to their equity in their home. So if we take that out as a balance sheet neutral thing, then their net cost of ownership was $10,521. But again, let's look at the balance sheet. The house that they were able to own because of that mortgage is now worth $24,000 more than when they bought it. So on their asset side of their balance sheet, it's $24,000 higher. Offset that by the $10,000 of a liability expense that they had for the cost of that ownership, they're still coming out with a net worth increase of $13,479. Now, again, looking at this equation, what's the big factor? It's appreciation rate. So I went ahead and looked online here at what appreciation rates were in Montana, average annual rate. And in the last 12 months, it's been close to 5.5%. Last 2 years, it's been 5%. 5 years, 11%. And 10 years, 8%. So if we come back and play around with numbers here, and we say, okay, what if appreciation's 5%? Now your net worth increase is $19,000. If we got up to 7% appreciation, now your net worth increase is $31,000. Okay, but we don't have a crystal ball. Let's say there's no appreciation at all. Well, in that case, it cost you to own that house because you didn't get any boost to your balance sheet by the ownership. But it would only need to appreciate at a rate of 2% to be somewhat balance sheet neutral in your cost versus your added value. So I hope this is helpful. I know I'm throwing a lot of numbers at you. If you want to look at your situation, by all means, reach out or anything you're thinking about doing. Let's crunch some numbers together.